Hi everyone, Autumn here. I'm just in between stuff for work and I wanted to do a quick video, and I'm in my car again, so avoid the lovely surroundings. I was thinking about, and I wanted to make a video on codependency, and I was watching Narcissist Free's video and rant on codependency, which was great, and also Randy Andretti's video. She spoke about it as well, and I've been thinking about it. So when I never saw myself as a codependent, and when I had first gotten out of the relationship or realized that I was in a relationship with a narcissist, I kind of confronted the idea that I might be a codependent. I was desperate for some type of label, and I was desperate for some kind of explanation. And I think that some people might find this video, if you as well are looking for a reason or explanation, and you're trying to figure it out, like I was, and there's this codependency label gets slapped on anybody who well, I'll go into what I think of really about codependence and the idea of codependency in a minute. So I somewhat embraced that label. Obviously I knew what codependency was. I had embraced it on a professional level. I had known about it. I knew the background, as Randy Andretti had spoken about in one of her videos about it. The idea of codependency came about honestly in the 1960s with Alcoholics Anonymous. Basically what it was it came about in reaction to Alcoholics Anonymous, with the partners of alcoholics and then eventually addicts, that they were the enablers, and that codependents were the enablers of alcoholics that allowed the alcoholic to basically be an alcoholic. That they would do things like call into work for them, cover for them with their employer, with their children, and be the person that would have essentially allow them to continue on with their addiction and function in the world. Their enabler. That term has evolved into a kind of all-encompassing term of anybody who's a quote-unquote doormat or a giver or enabler. And so for me, when I first realized I was in a relationship with with a narcissist and a cluster B personality disorder person, and I had confronted my narcissistic abuse, and I was in the throes of it, getting out of that relationship and that marriage, I said, okay, I must be a codependent. How else did this happen to me? I was just desperate. I didn't understand. And I was, it doesn't matter, what you think when you're emotionally just sideswiped like that and in so much pain, you're just knocked down. And I was knocked down, and I just grasped to whatever I was told and what I found and what, some random therapists. So that's a whole nother thing I'll talk about in a minute. So I started going to actually CODA meetings, which is Codependence Anonymous. And I went to a few meetings, and they were nice. I mean, people were nice, and there was a certain amount of sharing that went on in the meetings that was nice. But I'll be honest, I did not truly relate, and I realized a lot about codependency in those meetings, which is codependency, and within the people that were in the meetings, codependency is a bunch of bullshit. It's a generic term that doesn't really mean much. I feel like, and this is my personal and professional opinion, I feel like it's a term that is kind of this all-encompassing term that is labeled on anybody that the mainstream mental health industry or clinicians don't know what to label someone as, right? So they like to label victims as codependents, which is another BS thing that they often do. And this is because they don't know what else to label them as. And we live in a society, and our mental health industry and our country and our media and our political structure is just completely obsessed with labels. So you must be labeled something in order to be, be treated, in order to be quantified as legitimate, right? So that's part of it. The other part of it is this blame the victim mentality. So if I can label you as someone who has a problem, so a codependent has a problem, you are disordered, then you as a victim, I'm saying that you're the problem, you have a problem, that's why you were a victim. Again, now this is going into the therapeutic model too, and this is what I had a problem with, this is what I have a problem with, and I've spoken to a lot of people who have had problems with going to therapy after narcissistic abuse. And what you will find is that a lot of therapists will immediately go towards telling you, well, what's your problem? Let's not look at what the narcissist did. Let's not look at what your partner did that was abusing you, or the cluster B personality person in your life, what they did to you that hurt you. No, that doesn't matter, right? Let's look at you. Why was that person in your life? What's wrong with you that brought that person to you? Let's look at how you responded to it. Why did you stay? What's wrong with you that you allowed that to happen? Well, okay, so for me, I was only in the relationship for under 2 years, but that's even null and void. The point is this: it does not matter. Most of the time, with these types of covert cluster B personality disordered people, what I've started to learn, especially starting to work with people that are victims of this type of abuse, we all have issues. Okay, we all do. All of us. There's no one that doesn't. And honestly, you could, if you really wanted, the way that codependency is defined, anybody who's not a narcissist or not a cluster B personality disorder person in this world could technically be labeled a codependent. If I really wanted to get into semantics or into a very broad definition. So I just want to throw that out there. So that's number one, why it's ridiculous. But what Narcissist Free was talking about in terms of what part of the issue is what the person does to you as an abuser, the actions by which they what they do to you matters. How they hurt you, that is the problem. Okay, so I want people to remember. I had a client say to me, how did this happen to me? And I know that feeling. I had done a whole nother video on that, and I scrapped it because it was messed up. The audio was messed up, but I went through that phase. How did this happen to me? And I had a client recently that got out of a 10-year relationship with a narcissist and sociopath. And she was saying to me, why did this happen to me? And she's a physician, she's got this life, and what I explained to her is this: when it comes to this type of abuse that's so covert and you don't even know it's happening when it's happening, these people will be doing things behind your back. We as human beings can only make decisions based on the information that we have. We are not freaking psychic. This idea that we are to blame for the narcissistic abuse somehow like takes into some kind of weird consideration that we are psychic, that we knew about all this covert stuff going on behind our backs. That's the problem with this abuse. There's all this stuff going on that we don't know about. This is how these people function. This is why there are so many of them in our society that are causing so many problems. Because they can get away with it, because it's so covert and it's so hidden. And you often don't even know it's happening until after it's happened, or way after it's happened, or after all the fallout has happened. And so going back to that client, she kept saying, well, how did this happen to me? How did this happen to me? I should have known better. Or I came from a good family. I don't have childhood issues. I don't have... And that's what I was explaining to her. And this is what I'm explaining to you right now. And I'm telling you, there is nothing wrong with you. We all have some issues. And, you know, talking to her further, yeah, we all have some trust issues or some blah, blah, abandonment issues or some whatever. I mean, we all have something. This is called the human condition. Right? This is what all art and all literature and all classical music and all romance and all everything is born from. The human condition of having some type of emotional response to hardship in life. But, you know, when we talk about being disordered or having problems per se, when we talk about narcissistic abuse, or abuse from a cluster B personality disordered person, either you be a male, a female, either you be, you know, whatever socioeconomic background you're from, educational, it does not matter. And here's the other thing too. So screw the codependency label. I don't buy into it. Do I think that some people are codependent? Look, if some people want to take on that label, then cheers to them. I'll let them take that label on. But I have started to avoid using that label even professionally because, again, I think that label is too general. I think it encompasses too many people. I think it's a slap-on label for anybody that they can't figure out. I think it's a blame the victim label they tend to put on anybody who's a victim of any other toxic person, narcissistic or otherwise. I think it's a very generic label that I don't quite understand or agree with, to be honest. I'm not going to go into the details of what codependency is. You can look at Narcissist's free video. I'm going to post this, but I'll go back and review it later and include the link in the description below. But I want to end this video. I need to wrap it up and go on to my next appointment. But I want to end this with this. If you have been a victim of narcissistic abuse, not only do I encourage you not to take on the label of codependent, even if you look at what a codependent is and you see some similarities, like you're too much of a giver, you are too much of a doormat, okay, I encourage you not to take on the label of codependency. Yes, maybe you have to have higher standards and higher boundaries, better boundaries. That most of us need to work on. But I have been saying this, you know, it took me a while for me to see this in myself because I tend to be a little bit on the self-deprecating side sometimes and not seeing myself at, you know, the good parts of myself, a little too critical. But here's the truth. The narcissist, the narcissist, the cluster B personality person in your life, they picked you to be in a relationship with, to exploit, to manipulate, to treat like shit. They picked you to marry and use for whatever they used you for. Because, listen closely, they picked you because you're a kind, loving, sweet, generous, forgiving, honest, romantic, hopeful, forgiving person. Because you're a good, loving, kind person. That's why they picked you. Point blank. They have to. Manipulative people, cluster B or otherwise, sociopaths, borderlines, narcissists, or not even, just plain old shitty, toxic, manipulative people. They have to pick kind, loving, good, honest, forgiving, hopeful, positive, optimistic, caring people. It's the only type of people that their con and their manipulation works on. To call people like this codependent is a huge disservice. It's basically saying, and look, in our society, this, to me, that this is a reflection of how our society is. You know, let's label people who are good and kind and giving, and let's label them with having an issue, which is called codependency, instead of encouraging that. But I say, fuck that, right? We can't do that. We can't do it to ourselves. So you have to remind yourself, this is the reason why the cluster B in your life picked you, and these are good qualities. And just because someone exploited them before, we just have to have better boundaries, sure. And look, there was nothing you could have done, really, to prevent what happened to you. It was covert. It was all secret. So these people are evil. They are mean. Now that you know the red flags, now that you know the warning signs, now that you've been through it, now that you're watching these videos, the likelihood is it won't happen again. It could. Anything can happen in life. But the likelihood is it won't. So let's hope for that. But yeah, let's stay clear of the codependency thing. And let's see ourselves, you know, even though that this happened, and let's not blame ourselves for it. Let's blame the person who should be blamed, which is the cluster B personality person. Right? All right, namaste. I always get this wrong. Is this a her? All right, bye everyone. Have a good day.